motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It was announced yesterday that on the undercard of the upcoming Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis super lightweight title fight, we're going to be seeing IBF champion of Australia, Ebony Bridges, return to action and make a voluntary defense of her IBF title against her countrywoman, Avril Mathie.
I like the fight.
The night of the fight, it will have been approximately a year's time since Ebony Bridges last saw action, approximately a year's time since the Shannon O'Connell fight in December of last year, her big knockout win over her domestic rival, silencing a lot of critics and naysayers. It's unfortunate that she didn't get to build off of that all the momentum from that highlight reel knockout, it basically dissipated.
She sat out most of this year, and she's only now returning in December towards the end of it. So it wasn't a productive year.
She's going to be taking on yet another one of her countrywomen, Avril Mathie, who sports a professional record of 8 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 10 professional bouts, 10 professional contests. 36 years old, though she doesn't look it, to Ebony Bridges, who's 37.
Avril Mathie, the Australian-born, USA-based fighter. She's actually based right here in the US of A, out of Florida. Ebony Bridges herself, she's based out of the United Kingdom.
It seems these Australians definitely like to travel, and the fight between them will be held here in the US of A on the undercard of Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis. They held the kickoff press conference for that fight yesterday. Avril was last in action, at least according to BoxRec, in February of this year, opposite the ring, then unbeaten Ramla Ali. Avril lost a decision in what was a thoroughly entertaining fight.
And I could have swore that a few weeks ago, Avril squeezed in a fight between then and now. I could have swore that I saw Avril Mathie have a rebound fight.
Though according to BoxRec, she hasn't actually fought since then. She hasn't fought since February of this year, and she's catching Ebony at a very opportune time. Ebony Bridges, who sports a professional record of 9 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 4 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 10 professional bouts. Both fighters only have 10 professional bouts, but Ebony comparatively has fought much better fighters than Avril has. And as stated, Avril is catching her at a very opportune time because not only is Ebony shaking off ring rust in this fight, she hasn't fought in a while, but she's also breaking in a new trainer. She's not with Mark Tibbs anymore. She's with David Caldwell. This will be their first fight together.
That being said, Avril is catching Ebony at a very opportune time.
And some may find themselves asking, well, why did it take Ebony Bridges so long to come back? Why did she sit out most of this year? Unbeknownst to most, she actually went into the Shannon O'Connell fight late last year with an injured hand. And she decided to hold off on having surgery on it because if she did, she would have had to sit out for weeks and months and recuperate, and she may have been stripped of the IBF title for not satisfying her mandatory. So what she decided to do was go into the fight injured, take care of business, and then schedule the surgery afterwards, which she did. But as a result of that, she lost a lot of time. She lost most of this year.
Like I said at the start, it's unfortunate that after that highlight reel knockout over her domestic rival, she didn't get to build on that. She lost all that momentum. We haven't seen her most of the year.
She is just now coming back, and while I understand that she may have had to sit out the first or second quarter of this year, I wonder that they couldn't have brought her back sooner, that they couldn't have brought her back at least in the summer months. I mean, the very end of this year. That's the only fight she's gonna have.
Dealing with the constant call-outs of her Matchroom stablemate, WBA bantamweight champion Nina Hughes, she's been calling Ebony out all year.
If there is to be a unification match between them, it's gonna have to be next year, and Ebony's gonna have to take care of business with Avril first.
Avril, who is 1 year younger than Ebony Bridges and will be the noticeably taller and longer fighter of the two.
A first look. Because Avril Mathie is the taller, longer fighter, it would behoove her to make this a boxing match and keep it one. Keep it long and loose and on the outside, moving and punching. Ebony is the shorter, stumpier fighter. She's a pressure fighter. What she's got to do is close that distance and rough Avril Mathie up. You can draw out Avril into a shootout, into a gunfight. You just got to stay with her and stay on her. Having not fought in a year's time, the night of the fight,
will Ebony have the legs and the gas tank for this assignment?
she is 37 years old now. She's not getting any younger, and none of us are.
Breaking in a new trainer, essentially experimenting with a new trainer, perhaps a new base style, Avril is catching Ebony at a very opportune time.
Given both their penchant for all-out brawls and exchanges, it's going to be a fun fight, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, I'm sure you've heard by now that Paramount Global is to shut down Showtime Sports. The network will no longer broadcast boxing, something I've warned about here on this channel for years, ever since they renewed their deal with the PBC in 2018. Paramount Global's decision was based on the company focusing exclusively on scripted programming moving forward and eliminating 8-figure annual budgets previously allocated for live sports, primarily Showtime Championship Boxing and Bellator, an MMA promotional company that Paramount Global also owns. The positions of nearly 40 employees in Showtime Sports will be eliminated after December 29th. By December, Showtime and HBO, the sport's two most prominent platforms for many years, will have exited the sport 5 years apart. HBO announced that it would stop televising boxing in September of 2018 and aired its last live show in December of that year. That's the same year that Showtime renewed with the PBC, but that's also the same year that the PBC struck that deal with Fox. And that's an important detail.
And I said it a million times that if they don't turn those numbers around, Showtime Boxing is going to go the same way that HBO Boxing did.
Showtime has 2 more boxing telecasts scheduled for November 25th and December 9th. December, that's the same day as Haney vs. Prograis, as part of the network's exclusive content agreement with Al Heyman's PBC. The November 25th pay-per-view show will be headlined by super middleweights David Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino's Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas. The fights for its December 9th event, probably a pay-per-view show as well, have not been determined, but it will likely be held at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. Rumor has it that it's going to be Floyd Mayweather versus somebody else. Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, they're supposed to be on the undercard in separate bouts. Stefan Espinoza, Showtime's president of sports and event programming, issued a statement to BoxingScene.com. It is with profound disappointment that I shared this morning's news that the company has decided to shut down Showtime Sports at the end of this year, said Espinoza, who has headed Showtime Sports since November of 2011. For over 37 years, Showtime Sports and event programming has occupied an important position in the sports media ecosystem, delivering premium storytelling, bold and provocative documentaries, thoughtful analysis and discussion, and of course, outstanding live production of the biggest combat sports in history. We have helped illuminate the intersection of sports, culture, and society, and we have boldly and unapologetically explored stories and themes that others couldn't or wouldn't, and we have done it all with the highest standards of care and quality.
If that were true, they wouldn't be leaving. If that were true, after 37 years, Showtime wouldn't be bowing out.
Stefan continued, the company's decision is not a reflection of the work that we have done in recent years, nor our long and proud history. It is not an indictment on the value we have delivered to this network for 37 years, nor in particular in 2023. Unfortunately, in a rapidly evolving media marketplace, the company has had to make difficult choices allocating resources, resetting priorities, and reshaping its content offering. Espinoza emphasized that while the network had one of its strongest years in boxing in recent memory, particularly with pay-per-view events that were headlined by Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia, Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, Canelo Alvarez, and Jermell Charlo, factors outside of his department led to Paramount Global's decision.
Once again, that's not true. That's not reality.
Reality is, if the numbers were consistently good, year by year, then Paramount would have kept them on board.
You waited until the very last minute, the final hour, to deliver big metrics, and by then it was too little and too late.
Stefan continued, while today's news is certainly difficult and disappointing, it is entirely out of our control. So, as we have done when faced with similar challenges in the past, we will control the things that we can control. We will continue to deliver on our promise to subscribers and our content partners for the remainder of the year, namely, to continue to deliver the highest quality, industry-leading boxing programming that has established us as the unequivocal #1 destination for the sport worldwide. worldwide, and to finish what we started in 2023, perhaps the best year in our department's history.
It's that hyperbole that sees them bowing out of the sport. Stefan Espinoza saying that they are the unequivocal number one, the industry leader. No, you're not.
And that is, at least in part, a part of the problem, a big part of the problem. These guys didn't want to be honest with themselves. When you put a Javante Davis on pay-per-view 4 or 5 times, and all he brings you back is 200,000 or just a little over 200,000 pay-per-view buys, when you do that, you're wasting time and you're putting fights that should be on the regular schedule behind a paywall, so less people end up seeing them, and the platform itself, the Showtime platform, misses out on those metrics.
Numbers.
Misses out on all those eyes and ears and all those households.
I don't want to focus on just any one thing or any one fighter because there's a great number of small decisions that led to this.
But what you need to understand is that this is a direct result of the leadership at the PBC and Showtime Sports not doing their job, not providing the best content or the best numbers, because if they were putting up the numbers they needed to put up the last 5 years, Paramount wouldn't give them the boot.
You didn't start putting up good numbers until the last minute, the final hour. That's tantamount to studying for a test the night before.
So let's get it straight. The people at Paramount are not deciding to cut Showtime Boxing because of how great the numbers were or what great business they were doing. Showtime renewed with the PBC in 2018. That means you had 5 years, 5 extra years to make it work and make it happen. And you waited until the very last minute to put up good numbers.
And you only did it because you had to. I told you guys late last year that 2023 has to be a big year for Showtime Boxing because their jobs may depend on it.
The writing, as they say, the writing was on the wall, and some refused to read it, but I read it to you here on the channel, and what all of this could mean, the whole hullabaloo over there at Paramount and Showtime and what they want moving forward, more of a focus on their story-based programming, because that's what Showtime primarily shows.
And in spite of 37 years in the sport, most of Showtime subscribers, that's what they're there for. They're there for dramas and TV shows and movies, not sports.
I am going to be covering this subject extensively in the coming weeks and months, but what you need to understand here and now is that Showtime is not bowing out of boxing because of what great business they were doing or what great numbers they were doing. It's the opposite. They're bowing out of boxing because the numbers weren't up to scratch. And this is a numbers game. If you're putting up big numbers consistently, year by year, the people at Paramount are going to prioritize your content, not cut it.
Don't let Stefan tell you different, that it was all about outlying factors. No, you had a job to do, and you didn't do it.
In a word, in a sentence I should say, somebody fucked up. And that's why after 37 years in the sport of boxing, Showtime is now bowing out. It's because people weren't doing what they needed to do when they needed to do it. And you can't wait till the last minute, the very last minute, your last year on your existing deal to try to turn things around. That's too little and too late.
So first things first, that's what you need to know, that somebody fucked up.
That this isn't what happens when you're doing good business and when business is on the up and up. So not only did somebody fuck up, somebody lied to you guys.
How many times did I tell you? How many times? Don't believe the hype.
Jarron Ennis, who's been fighting almost exclusively on Showtime, says, Keith Thurman, he's acting like he didn't get an offer. He just doesn't want to fight.
Bozy Ennis, Jarron's father, said that they didn't have a contract with Showtime, but they were loyal to them because they liked the way they were being treated there.
Fans and the majority of media members aren't privy to what takes place behind closed doors, so unsurprisingly, Ennis has been chastised for his inability to lure Thurman into the ring. Although he's normally private and refrains from revealing certain things, Ennis let the cat out of the bag to let his fans know that it wasn't his fault. We're trying, said a frustrated Ennis to YSM Sports Media. There's nothing else I can do. I get tired of hearing his name. He keeps acting like he never got an offer before. Thurman was once the man to beat. To a certain extent, he still is, but his star power doesn't shine quite as bright as it once did.
Do you remember what I said about a series of small decisions that led to Showtime leaving boxing in my previous segment? Do you remember that I said that?
If you're Showtime, and you're invested in the career of Jarron Boots Ennis, who, unbeknownst to most, is not a PBC fighter. He's not a Heyman fighter. He may fight on PBC shows, but he's not actually one of Heyman's boys. He's with Cameron Duncan. And if Showtime is invested in this fighter, and they have been, he's fought on the network almost exclusively, it behooved them to put him in the ring with Keith Thurman so he could have that crossover fight, that passing of the torch fight that he needs but hasn't had.
And now that Showtime is leaving the business, and that moment to make that happen, now that that moment is gone, what does Jarron Boots Ennis do?
He is tantamount to a refugee, a man without a country. And so far, he's been unable to get Keith Thurman in the ring. Keith Thurman, whose injuries and a propensity to play the waiting game have cost him a ton of activity. Since 2019, he's only fought once, a unanimous decision victory over Mario Barrios over a year ago. He may be out of the spotlight, but Thurman is hoping to eventually get his hands on Crawford. His perpetual need to call out the division's top gun isn't exactly surprising to Ennis, considering his age. The rising star believes that Thurman is simply looking for one last gigantic paycheck before hanging his gloves up for good. And that check, if it ever comes, it won't be coming from Showtime Boxing.
So where should Jarron Ennis go? What should he do?
He's not a Heyman fighter. He's not actually with the PBC. He's been boxing exclusively on Showtime, but now Showtime is out of boxing. What's the plan? And I think for Jarron Ennis, you can't focus on the past. You can't focus on what the PBC used to have, thinking that you should go with them. They ain't got all the welterweights anymore. Sean Porter retired, Danny moved up, Terrence and Errol are about to, and you ain't having no luck with Keith Thurman. So he should go with whoever can get him the most fight dates, whoever can keep him busy. He stated he just wants to cash out. He's older. He can still fight. He's still good, but he's just trying to find a big payday. In reference to Keith Thurman, i.e., you can't guarantee, no one can, that you can get him in the ring.
Chasing around a fighter that doesn't want to fight you, that can't be the plan. Getting Keith in the ring cannot be the focus.
You've been boxing on Showtime exclusively, and after this year, Showtime is out of boxing. So your focus has to be finding a new home for your fights, a new platform. And I think that platform should be ESPN. I think Jarron Ennis should go to Top Rank.
Listen, all the big names at welterweight are gone. If nothing else, they can keep him busy.
He should go there.